That is a beautiful picture. Look at that. Look at that. That is Representative McDreamy, Representative Sean Patrick Maloney and his family. Proud to have my girls by my side tonight. Justice for George Floyd. Peaceful protests. He joins us now. I'm sorry, did I say McDreamy? That was a misspeak.
Stop
Representative Sean Patrick Maloney of the great state of New York.
That's my new name. I'm changing it. I'm going to work on a back.
You mentioned my picture right behind me, my dad, who I am partial to handsome representatives from upstate New York. My dad was a congressman from Buffalo, New York area, and then vice presidential candidate. And you said he's very handsome, and I said, so are you.
This is like serious daddy issues we're talking about right now.
Oh, big time with you. I'm talking about me.
You know, my dad was a conservative as well. We were talking about that a little before we got on the air. But
wait, you had to say the thing you said, that he was rooting for the Clinton impeachment.
I was saying when I went home during the Clinton impeachment and I was working in the Clinton White House in the West Wing as the staff secretary, I found my dad watching the impeachment coverage and rooting for the House Republican impeachment managers. And I said to him, it's a true story, I said to him, Dad, you know, if those guys win, I'm going to be out of a job. I'm going to be like living here with you and Mom on the couch. So, but we love our dads. They can be complicated collection of things.
So we both have daddy issues. It's another thing that bonds us, Representative. But we were saying, and then you quoted Goldwater. You said extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And I was like, well, he was wrong about that. And I said my dad's role was always to start a speech with what Barry meant to say was.
Right.
And,
well,
and I feel like whoever's Biden's vice president is going to have that same role at times.
You know, the truth is, though, there aren't many conservatives in American political history, particularly at that level, who don't look better now that Donald Trump has dragged the conservative movement into the gutter, right? In other words, George Will wrote an extraordinary column today just taking the president apart. I mean, that's George Will, who was, for many of us growing up, this, voice to be contended with. If you had to bring your A game, he knows his history and his literature and writes beautifully, and he's an intellectual. There used to be an intellectual side to the Republican movement. I mean, William F. Buckley Jr. or Arnaud de Beauchegrave. I mean, the tradition Barry Goldwater brought along with him was not just this reactionary one. There was a whole intellectual. I mean, the Federalist Society, when I was in law school, produced some of the most brilliant lawyers of our generation. But starting with Sarah Palin, and ever since, it's just gone straight into the zip code of the dumb. I don't know what happened to smart conservatives. It's sad to see.
Yeah, no, I mean it really is. And I by the way, happy Pride. You as a gay man, I mean, we remember Barry Goldwater's quote: "You don't have to be straight in the military; you just have to shoot straight." I mean, it is amazing. Right. And I was saying about my dad being a Nuremberg prosecutor, and Representative. People at least are saying it flat out now. This is fascism we're looking at. This is fascism, what the president was talking about yesterday.
I think yesterday presented just such disturbing images of clearing peaceful protesters so you can go do a photo op, holding up a Bible in a bizarre way. I think that should offend people of faith. Indeed, it offended the leader of that congregation, who spoke beautifully about how offensive that was. And we should remember that Stonewall was a riot too. Stonewall was a riot against police tactics of raiding LGBT establishments. And so there is a place for protest, and it's often what is necessary to move the rest of us into that space of reasonable change. And so, God bless those peaceful protesters. Obviously, we all condemn violence. We all condemn people who are, looting or harming others. But let's not confuse that with what happened. As Reverend Al Sharpton said, the violence started when that officer put his knee on that man's neck. And that is the violence.
And they were peaceful protesters yesterday, Representative, that the President of the United States had gassed so that he could go get a photo op, a fake photo op with a book that he's never read. I mean, it's there's so many. I mean, now that we're in an extended game of guess the quote, I was trying to think of, but Barry Goldwater, who said, every good, what did he say? Christian ought to kick Jerry Falwell right in the ass. And, some quote about when these right-wing preachers get hold of the Republican Party. I mean, he warned against all this. And I'm trying to find the quote. Travis, what was the
No, you're right.
The quote about when fascism arrives in America, it'll come wrapped in a in the flag and holding the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what we saw yesterday.
That was prescient, and the truth is, from Barry Goldwater to Ronald Reagan, they knew there was a wolf at the door of the conservative movement, and it was the reactionary, racist element in our society, and John Birch's society, that Reagan would not sanction. And while I wouldn't let him off the hook, I think the Republican Party has benefited for a generation from the Southern strategy of exploiting racial tension in the South. I mean, there's a lot of hard questions I think the modern Republican Party needs to answer, because they have been dancing with this devil for years. But now the monster is loose in the village. They make it's just to mix our metaphors. I mean, it's fun, right? When you're creating this monster in the dungeon and you're screaming it's alive, but now the monster's loose in the village. And the parable of Frankenstein is apt, because in the end the monster comes back to the castle and kills the creator. And I think that what you're seeing is the destruction of an American political party by this willingness to embrace these dark forces.
I say this every week on the show, Representative. It's right. Trumpenstein, whatever you want to call him. I'm like, you created him. Come get your monster. Yeah, it'd be great if you came and got your monster now. I mean, is anyone going to say anything, Representative? How are we going to get through these next 6 months? Is anyone of conscience on their side going to say, you have just declared war on the American people? You're going to use the military against the American people? Is anyone going to stop this madness? Or is anyone going to call for his resignation? I mean, I don't know where we go from here.
Right. Well, some of us voted to impeach, right? So let's remember, we had an opportunity to hold the president accountable for unlawful conduct, and the Senate flinched. So the most important protest, as important as the protests we're seeing right now are, the most important protest we're going to have this year is on Election Day. And everyone who's concerned about this needs to get involved. It is not a time to sit it out. You got to register, you got to vote, you got to get your neighbors to the polls, because the most important rebuttal in American politics is a big election win. And if we win the presidency back and the Senate, believe me, the Republican Party is going to have a tough conversation with itself. Might look more like a civil war in that party, because their road back to power will have to be to get these reactionary, racist, quasi-fascist, impulses the hell out of that party.
Yeah. Well, and you're echoing, Representative, what Obama said yesterday, right? I mean, he talked about vote. He used to say, "Don't boo, vote." But that's exactly what you're saying. I mean, he basically, where is this part that I loved? He said, if we want to bring about real change, then the choice isn't between protest and politics. We have to do both. We have to mobilize to raise awareness, and we have to organize and cast our ballots to make sure we elect candidates who act on reform. Close by saying, watching the heightened activism of young people in recent weeks of every race and every station makes me hopeful. If going forward we can channel our justifiable anger into peaceful, sustained, effective action, then this moment can be a real turning point in our nation's long journey to live up to our highest ideals. Let's get to work. As he always used to say, right? Like, get a broom. Get a broom. Yeah, don't boo, vote.
It's not an either or. I mean, he's right. You got to protest and you got to vote and you got to be engaged. And I hope young people especially get this message. I think sometimes, kids can think like, it's all nonsense. There's nothing motivating about it. But this is the path to real change. It always has been. And it ain't clicking and sharing only. It ain't, even going to protest only. You got to vote. You got to get involved, because, look, there's reason for hope. I mean, in 2018, we had the largest turnout since 1914 in this country, and we had the largest win by a party out of power in American history, 8.6% nationally. That's a major course correction, and I think those forces are still at work. I think the president's going to have a rough time on the course he's on, and he deserves it. But everybody's got to vote.
Well, and that's why I really appreciated your tweet and your work on this. You said, let me get this straight. You can safely vote by mail, but not if you're a Democrat, and definitely not if you're concerned about your health in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, I don't know, it's good. Well, it's a bad thing and a good thing, but you can tell that this is driven by sheer panic, that he knows he is losing. And he's going to, I mean, if you're looking at any polling anywhere, they are frantic to keep people from voting. And you're right. It's okay for the whole Trump family, okay for the military, okay for Republicans, but God forbid this allows more Democrats to vote safely.
Right. Well, John Kennedy stood in front of the Berlin Wall, I believe, and said democracy has its faults, but we've never had to build a wall to keep our people in. Yeah. And I feel like the Democratic Party has our faults, but we've never been afraid to let people vote. I mean, let people vote, and if they vote for somebody else, that should send you a message. But these voter suppression efforts are so cynical and so damaging. You got to let people vote. And in a pandemic, my God, what are we going to do? Put seniors and people with compromised immune systems or fighting cancer in line someplace when they could vote safely by mail? And by the way, you know who voted. I think this is the thing I always want to scream when the president says there's going to be fraud. We don't know who you voted for, but we know everyone that voted. It's the easiest thing in the world to go and check if the dead people voted, because you know they're dead and they shouldn't have voted.
Representative,
that was all about commitment and found no fraud. It's such nonsense.
I know.
You can voting, you can find out.
I am not conspiratorial, but the fact that he was on the phone yesterday with Putin, again, I mean, you just went through this with the impeachment. This is all one story, starting from 2016 right up until, I mean, it tells me that they know Russia's going to help again. They're opening the door. They're giving the green light. They're already in here fomenting racial violence as they did in 2016 and racial unrest. And this is what is so infuriating, is like this plot can't get any more obvious. Him like postponing the G7 to let Russia in. And a Democratic governor can't get on the phone to get life-saving equipment, but Putin can get him on the phone virtually, every day from what we're hearing.
No, that's a great point. And let's remember, this is exactly the kind of material that is the grist for Russian online disinformation campaigns. This is precisely the kind of thing they like to stir up on both sides by flooding the zone with bots and misinformation, the Antifa stuff. They love to whip us up against each other, which is why people have to only rely on real sources of news. You can't just believe everything online. A lot of it may be actually not just inaccurate, but designed to incite by malign foreign actors like the Russians.
Yeah. But you mentioned impeachment, Representative, and I will admit I've been cheating on you with Representative Val Demings, who has been on the show and I love. But she said the same thing. Everything we warned about an impeachment is happening. Everything we said is going to happen if you don't stop him is happening. And so...
First of all, she's fantastic, and we sit next to each other on the Intelligence Committee, so we work closely together, and we sat next to each other all the way through the intel hearings that led to the impeachment. And I want to tell you, she is a real star. I mean, she is smart, she is tough. She's a former police chief, by the way. She has a strong religious faith. She's honest. I'm telling you what, keep your eye on her. She has a very bright future.
I don't even know anymore if I'm cheating on Kamala Harris, who I love, with Val Demings, or if I'm cheating with I love because someone tweeted Kamala Harris is the first U.S. senator to join the nationwide protest to honor George Floyd and other Black lives killed by police. This is all you need to know about who she is. This list for, as a vice presidential candidate's daughter, I mean, this list is really impressive, and it is a tough choice, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and it's an embarrassment of riches, I think. Whether you look at people like, the governor of Michigan, or if you look at people, Elizabeth Warren would please a lot of people. I think the vice president is going to also have a really strong group of African Americans to look at as well, from Stacey Abrams to Val Demings to Kamala Harris. It's pretty cool, the leaders the Democratic Party is producing.
I know, and I was going to say, now I see why people are talking about Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms from Atlanta as well on the short list. Let's listen to her real quick.
He should just stop talking. This is like Charlottesville all over again. He speaks and he makes it worse. There are times when you should just be quiet, and I wish that he would just be quiet.
Yeah, one more, the mayor of Atlanta.
Or if he can't be silent, if there's somebody of good sense and good conscience in the White House, put him in front of a teleprompter and pray that he reads it and at least says the right things, because he is making it worse.
Yeah, that is... her only deficit is she looks 12. She seems amazing.
Oh, stop.
But yeah, but he says by August 1st, right? He's going to choose. But
look,
Biden,
that is a leader speaking right there, and I'm proud that I belong to a political party that's putting forward those voices, because now is the time when white Americans need to listen to people of color.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I am partial to handsome lawyer congressman from upstate New York. If you weren't gay and I wasn't gay, who knows what could have happened at a different time.
You are like the Donald Trump to my Kim Jong Un. It
That's the sweetest thing a man's ever said to me. Happy Pride, Representative Sean Patrick Maloney.
Happy Pride, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.